Greetings! In this video I will talk about the Battle of Grunwald, which took place on July 15th, 1410. In this battle, the combined armies of the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania defeated the army of the Teutonic Order. First, a bit of background. The Teutonic Order, or the Order of Brothers of the German House of St. Mary in Jerusalem, was founded in 1290 during the Third Crusade, after the capture of the fortress of Acre from the Muslims. As the name of the order suggests, its members could only be knights of German origin. However, the knights did not achieve much success in the Holy Land and quickly moved their activities to Europe. In 1225, Duke Conrad of Mazovia invited the knights of the order to help him fend off the attacks of the pagan Prussians, and in 1232 the first knights arrived in Poland. The king granted the Teutons land for settlement on the right bank of the Vistula River. The capital of the order became the city of Marienburg, in Polish Malbork. From the very beginning of its existence, the order demonstrated significant military activity. The knights gradually conquered the lands of the Prussians and Pomerania. In 1237, by merging with the Order of the Sword Brothers, they became rulers of Livonia. After capturing the territory of the Estonians, the order created one of the largest states in northern Europe. Starting in 1280, the Knights of the Teutonic Order began a series of wars with the then-pagan Lithuania, attempting to conquer an important region of the state, Samogitia. The most important event in the history of this region was the Union of Krevo. In 1385, the Grand Duke of Lithuania married the Polish queen, Jadwiga, was baptized, and proclaimed King of Poland under the name Władysław II Jagiełło. The two countries were to unite, and the people of Lithuania were to be converted to Catholicism. However, the complete unification of the states was not achieved at that time. Under the 1392 Ostrov Agreement, Vytautas, the cousin of Jagiełło, was recognized as the Grand Duke of Lithuania, Russia, and Samogitia, although he acknowledged vassal dependence on the Polish king. Now, let's move closer to the battle. The Crusaders did not recognize the baptism of Lithuania. Teutonic propaganda declared it to be superficial and invalid, and the order continued its pressure on Lithuania. Tensions between the order and its allies grew until, finally, in August 1409, the Grand Master of the order, Ulrich von Jungingen, declared war on the Kingdom of Poland and the Grand Duchy of Lithuania. Thus began the so-called Great War, 1409 to 1411. The Battle of Grunwald became the decisive battle of this war. The 1410 campaign began with a joint Polish-Lithuanian march. On June 30th, 1410, the two armies united, and on July 3rd, the combined army invaded the territory of the Teutonic Order and moved toward the order's capital, Marienburg. At dawn on July 15th, 1410, both armies met on a field covering approximately 4 square kilometers between the villages of Grunwald, Tannenberg, and Ludwigsdorf. What did the enemy armies consist of? The primary military unit was the lance, consisting of the knight with a long spear and shield, his closest relatives and squires, who could be miners, as well as a certain number of archers. These archers were recruited from villages owned by the knight, usually numbering 5 to 10 men. The lances were united into banners, and the poles had 51 banners. The number of soldiers in each banner varied, from several dozen to several hundred. In total, the Polish army numbered around 18,000 to 20,000 men, the majority of whom were cavalry, and about 4,000 were infantry used to guard the supply trains. The Polish army also had two banners of Czech mercenaries, among whom was possibly John Žižka, the future leader of the Hussites, as well as warriors from Moravia and Silesia. A separate unit was a detachment sent by the voivode of Moldavia, Alexander the Good, a vassal of the king. The Polish army was led by the king himself. The Lithuanian army was commanded by Vytautas. It consisted of 40 banners and around 11,000 to 12,000 warriors. Additionally, the Allies had Tatars fighting on their side, commanded by Jalal ad-Din, the son of Toktamish. Their exact number is unknown, but estimates range from 300 to 5,000. The Teutonic Order's army was led by Grand Master Ulrich von Jungingen. It consisted of 51 banners or standards, with a total of about 27,000 warriors. Of these, 5 banners were assigned to the highest-ranking order hierarchs, 6 were provided by the Prussian bishoprics, 31 were raised by territorial units and cities, and 9 were made up of foreign mercenary detachments and so-called guests, knights from France, Silesia, Bohemia, and other European countries. The full-fledged knights of the order numbered about 250, and they served as commanders at the middle and senior levels. Now, about the equipment and armament. The Teutonic Knights primarily wore helmets of the Topfhelm type, a pot-like helmet, or a bassinet with a visor that was attached with hinges and could be raised. The most popular type of visor was the so-called bassinet Gunzgugel, a dog snout visor. The beak-shaped visor and the pointed top of such helmets were designed to deflect blows from the enemy. There were also highly artistic and more complex great bassinets, which were never mass-produced. The protective armor for arms and legs was mostly solid metal, plate armor. The coat of arms was worn on the shield and on the cotte, a light linen garment worn over armor. Less wealthy knights could wear brigandines, armor made of fabric or leather, with metal plates attached to the inner side. A cheaper alternative to bassinets were chapelle de fer, helmets, a type of cap. The horses of the most noble knights were covered with elaborate caparisons, decorated with their heraldic arms, either embroidered or painted on them. The primary weapon for mounted combat was the spear, along with the sword, mace, or battle-axe. The artillery consisted of 100 bombards with calibers ranging from 3.6 pounds to 5 poods. It seems that the number of these weapons has been greatly exaggerated. Moreover, during the battle, it rained, and as a result, the Crusader artillery only managed to fire 2 shots. The armor of a Lithuanian warrior differed from that of a Teutonic knight in appearance. Eastern influences were evident. Chainmail and scale armor predominated. Some of their chainmail armor was reinforced with iron plates. The most notable part of their armament was a helmet of a round or conical shape, narrowing at the front with a chainmail coif. Chainmail was also widely used to protect the legs, along with leather boots. The armor of the Polish knights represented a transition from Eastern to German forms, and over time they became more westernized, with Polish knights increasingly resembling their German counterparts. The Tatar units in Vytautas's army wore traditional attire, padded gowns, leather boots, gloves, and vests. On the morning of July 15th, both armies lined up opposite each other. Among the Allies, the Polish cavalry took the right flank, the Lithuanian cavalry occupied the left, and the mercenaries formed the center. The Allies arranged their forces into 3 battle lines, called Gufi, the vanguard, the main army, where the main forces were concentrated, and a 3rd line, a free guff, along with a reserve. The Crusader army also arranged itself into 3 battle lines, with the third line serving as a reserve directly commanded by the Grand Master. The Teutonic Knights concentrated their elite heavy cavalry against the Lithuanians, under the command of Grand Master Friedrich von Wallenrode. The right wing was positioned opposite the Polish forces and was led by the Grand Commander Kuno von Liechtenstein. Both armies were deployed, but the battle had not yet begun. Ulrich von Jungingen, the Grand Master of the Teutonic Order, desperately wanted the Allied army to attack first and decided to take an insulting step toward the commanders of the Polish-Lithuanian forces. He sent 2 swords to Jagiełło and Vytautas. Heralds announced the message from the Grand Master, stating that he sent 2 swords as encouragement for the upcoming battle, so that you and your army may immediately engage in battle with more courage than you are currently showing, and stop hiding, dragging out the fight and staying in shelter in the forests and groves. If you find the battlefield too narrow to deploy your forces, the Grand Master of Prussia, Ulrich, in order to spur you into battle, is ready to retreat as much as you wish from the open field occupied by his army, or choose any battlefield to avoid further delaying the fight. Jagiełło did not fall for this provocation, but Vytautas ordered the attack. Thus, the battle began with an assault by the Tatars and Lithuanians. However, the Tatar arrows could not pierce the Teutonic Knights' armor, and the Lithuanian light cavalry was not very effective against the heavily armored knights. After withstanding the Lithuanian charge, the Teutonic Knights began their counterattack. The charge of the well-armed knights was incredibly powerful, and the Lithuanian cavalry retreated from the battlefield. The retreat was covered, as reported by Jan Długosz, by 3 Smolensk banners. During the retreat, the Lithuanians managed to destroy part of the Crusader forces, whose battle formation was disrupted. Another part of the Crusaders attacked the Poles. They were joined by 6 banners from Wallenrode, which ceased the pursuit of the Lithuanians. At this point, King Jagiełło sent the reserve banners to aid the Poles. In response, the Grand Master, thinking the Lithuanians would not return to the battlefield, threw all of his reserves, 16 banners, at the Polish army. However, the Lithuanian army returned to the battlefield. And how they returned. The Lithuanian cavalry and Tatars circled around the left flank of the Teutonic forces, causing the main part of the Crusader army to be surrounded. The Teutonic Order's army was destroyed, and what remained of it capitulated. The losses of the Order and its allies were approximately 8,000 dead, with up to 14,000 taken prisoner. 205 of the Order's knights, out of 250, were killed, including nearly all of the Order's senior leadership, led by the Grand Master. The cavalry of the Grand Duchy of Lithuania lost about half of its riders, but the total losses of the Polish-Lithuanian forces remain unknown. The Allies stood on the bones for 3 days, after which they began their march toward Marienburg. The castle was besieged, but the weary and weakened Polish-Lithuanian army did not attempt an assault. The siege was lifted, and the Order continued to exist. However, the Order's strength was severely weakened, and soon it acknowledged vassal dependence on the Polish state. In the early 16th century, the Duchy of Prussia was established on its remnants. With that, I conclude my story. Goodbye,